We need to talk about Mason Mount, Joshua Zirkzee, Kobbie Mainoo, Shay Lacy, and more in today's video. A very interesting stat has come out on Mason Mount's impact, which actually has really surprised me. Mason Mount has been good this season, but actually, he's been pretty good statistically as well. 2 January exits possible, the 2 players that could leave in January revealed, but Joshua Zirkzee apparently has changed his mind and wants to stay. Mainoo wants out, and there's now reports that Mainoo to Napoli is 99% done and could be a permanent deal, although I would take that source of information with a pinch of salt. But apparently Amorim is fuming with Ineos over the potential sale of Mainoo. The story doesn't really make any sense to me that Amorim is fuming when there's now reports that Amorim and Mainoo don't get on. We're going to dive into that story a little bit later on. We'll talk about Shay Lacy. We'll talk about Conor Gallagher coming in. Is he a Mainoo replacement? Is Mainoo going to go? And more. So, hello, and welcome back to Alice Talks Football, and welcome back to your 10-minute Manchester United news, transfer news, update news, and roundup show, where we're going to round up all the latest Manchester United news today in 10 minutes for you guys. If you do enjoy today's video, feel free to hit that like button, and if you're new, you're welcome to subscribe. But before we get into the chaos, which is the transfer news, let's just talk about this stat. So Sky Sports put this up, and this is stats where Mount starts and doesn't start. In the 7 games Mount has started, we've won 5, drew 1, and lost 1. And we have a win rate of 71.4% and 2.3 points per game, which is pretty good, especially under Ruben Amorim, where our win rate isn't great. Our win rate when Mount starts is actually pretty good. The games he doesn't start, we have won 2 out of 8, drawn 3, and lost 1, a win rate of 25%. Now, the interesting thing about that is 2 plus 3 plus 1 is 6, not 8 games. So, not sure if the math is mathing there from Sky Sports, but our win rate is significantly higher than Mason Mount plays. Now, you could argue it's because of the games that Mason Mount plays in, the opposition that we play. It's not necessarily Mason Mount, and, we can argue that, but when you look at his pressing, when you look at his off-the-ball movement, when you look at the goals that he has scored in important moments like Sunderland, I think that was a good goal. Obviously against Wolves was a good goal. Obviously the free kick against Palace. He has been very important this season. He's got 3 goals in his last 4 starts for us. And I have been impressed with Mason Mount, who I think knows Amorim's system well, knows what Amorim wants on and off the ball in his system. And I think his movement is key. Now, I'm not saying Mason Mount is the key to this side and he has to start every game, because I think there's certain games where he has kind of been invisible. But I think Mason Mount, now that he's fit and now that he's had a run of games to gain sharpness, we're seeing the Mason Mount that we wanted to spend 55 million on. I never wanted us to spend that kind of money on Mount. I wanted us to go for Caicedo, and I've been frustrated with Mount because of his injuries. But I've always said Mount is a good player. Mason Mount had games here and there for Man United, but because he'd be out for 2 months, play a game, be out for 2 months, play a game, when he did play, he wasn't sharp. Because this is the first time since he's joined Man United that he's actually stayed fit consistently, he's had those 6 or 7 games to actually build up his sharpness, and we've seen in these last 4 or 5 games just how sharp he is. And now that he's built up his sharpness, you can see that his passing, and look, it's Wolves. Wolves are crap. Wolves gave us loads of space. Nobody's going to be as bad as Wolves in the league. But his passing versus Wolves was so crisp and he looked so much more sharp. We saw the impact of that, and hopefully he keeps it up. But now I want to get into news on the January exits. Simon Stone said, and Simon Stone is one of the better journalists in the space, he's pretty credible. He said Mainoo and Zirkzee are the most obvious players who will leave the club, either on loan or permanently, before the transfer deadline. If either did, the chances are replacements would be needed. Basically, what he's saying is, if there was players to leave, it would be Mainoo or Zirkzee. They're most likely to leave in January, if someone was to leave in January. But Man United would look for replacements. They don't want to make decisions till after AFCON, we know that. Now there's reports that Mainoo wants to go, but there is actually a report coming out from Sky that Joshua Zirkzee now wants to stay at Manchester United and fight for his place. The problem is, Amorim doesn't seem to give Zirkzee a whole lot of minutes. And Zirkzee needs minutes, a bit like I was talking about with Mount, to build up that sharpness. Because once Zirkzee had a load of minutes in his legs at the back end of last season, he actually, just before he got injured last season, was one of our most important players for about 2 months, probably our only attacker that was bringing something. And if you look at the game versus West Ham when he got taken off, we completely lost control. I'm not saying Zirkzee's the answer. I'm not saying Zirkzee this, Zirkzee that. But what I'm saying is Zirkzee has a very unique skill set. He can give us control. He can drop deep in the pockets. And I think there's certain game states where it'd be really beneficial to have Zirkzee in the squad. And if he can get the minutes and get a few more goals under his belt, I think he's got the quality there to be a good player for us. I just don't think Amorim's going to give him those minutes to do that. And I think he probably will go in the summer. But there's now reports that he wants to stay, and I'm happy with that. Mainoo, however, does not want to stay. Mainoo wants to leave in January. He does not believe he has a future at United under Amorim, and Bayern and Napoli are among clubs interested. We can't be cross at Mainoo. We can't blame Mainoo for this because we all think he doesn't have a future under Ruben Amorim. Now, Ineos and Ruben Amorim have insisted that Kobbie Mainoo is the future and that, he's just competing with Bruno this year and he will be the future when Bruno leaves. La, la, la. But Mainoo is frustrated. He's upset. It's like Ten Hag and Ahmad. Mainoo and Amorim. Mainoo is not getting minutes. If we were top of the league and Casemiro and Bruno had been excellent every game, Mainoo wasn't getting in, I'd just say fair enough. But I think it's the fact that there's so many games we play where the midfield's been poor, and I'm like, we need someone like Mainoo with Mainoo's skill set in this game, and he doesn't come on, which is mad. The manager continuously ignores him, and I feel for Mainoo. It was asked if Mainoo and Amorim have a good relationship, and Laurie Whitwell, who's very well informed, said no, they don't have a good relationship. Mainoo wants to go. Now the feeling is that Mainoo's preference would be Napoli, and there's mixed reports on Mainoo to Napoli. Napoli want to agree a loan deal with Kobbie Mainoo within a couple of weeks. I think if Mainoo goes, it will be a loan deal because if he does well on loan, it gets his value up if Man United decide to sell him in the summer. Or if he does well on loan and Amorim is sacked, United can bring him back in the summer because we know that the next manager will probably utilise Mainoo because he's such a good talent. Amorim could have Pedri and he wouldn't play Pedri. Do you know what I mean? I think the loan is smart because as much as I'd like to be wrong about Amorim, I'd like Amorim to turn it around, I don't think Amorim will be Man United manager in 2 years, if I'm going to be honest. Now, this is where it gets interesting, and this was said by Team Talk. Man United sale that anger Ruben Amorim 99% done after talks accelerate. Now, this is about Kobbie Mainoo, that Ruben Amorim is furious that the Kobbie Mainoo sale is 99% done when he doesn't use Mainoo. Maybe he has plans for Mainoo in the future, or maybe the report is absolutely BS. I'm leaning towards the second one. But it was said by Team Talk, but via Area Napoli, via the OneFootball app, that United are close to agreeing a controversial sale of Kobbie Mainoo per Italian journalist Luca Caricione via Area Napoli. Talks between United and Napoli have significantly accelerated, and the deal is described as 99% done. Report states it will be a permanent transfer, not a loan, and Amorim is expected to be furious as he told the club not to let Mainoo leave. Now, this is interesting. Amorim furious of a permanent sale of Mainoo when he doesn't play Mainoo. Does he have long-term plans for Mainoo? Is it made up? That is the question. But it's now coming out saying that Mainoo's exit is 99% done and it's expected to be a permanent. I can't see us letting Mainoo go on a permanent, especially when Amorim's future is still up in the air despite Ineos backing him. I think Mainoo will go on loan. I don't think he's going to go on a permanent, despite reports in Italy. I can only see Kobbie Mainoo going out on loan, but there is now reports that a permanent deal is 99% done, so it's definitely one to watch to see what happens. Now, if we were to sell Mainoo, we'd have to bring in a replacement, and it said that United aren't going to let anyone go out on loan without a replacement, and that replacement could be Conor Gallagher. Alex Cook said, I don't think United would sign Gallagher on a permanent transfer because they've maybe got more expensive targets like Wharton, Anderson and Belaber on the list. I think United will go for Gallagher if they can get him on loan, but I can't see United coughing up 30 million to have Conor Gallagher on a permanent deal. I think if Mainoo goes on loan, Gallagher will go on loan. I'd be shocked if Mainoo went on a permanent. I'd be shocked if United did Gallagher on a permanent. United want Wharton, Anderson, Belaber. They want two of Wharton, Anderson and Belaber. Laurie Whitwell said this. We spoke about this earlier. Whether we can get to or not is a different question. It could depend on Champions League football, and that's what we're saving midfield funds towards. All three players are available in the summer, not January, which is why it's expected United will not do anything in January as they save funds towards those players. Now, in terms of January, in terms of opportunities, Shay Lacy's been spoken about a lot. He's been in the squad, but he's not made his debut yet. And Bumo and Ahmad are going to AFCON, so there's a feeling that Shay Lacy could get minutes for Manchester United soon. Amorim was asked about Shay Lacy and said, sometimes when Mbumo is not there, I put Ahmad there because I have other wing-backs to play, and sometimes it's hard. So you are asking me why I don't play Lacy when I have other guys that are internationals and they're also on the bench. I try and put the best guys, the guys most prepared for this moment of the club, and try and win the game. He's saying he's not playing Lacy yet because he believes he has better players to play that role. Which, look, Ahmad is better than Lacy and Mbumo was better than Lacy, don't get me wrong. But I would like to see Shay Lacy given maybe a 10-minute cameo versus Wolves when we're 4-1 up, because it is what Manchester United's about. So I was disappointed not to see him versus Wolves, but it's not the end of the world. We won the game. Anyway, people, thank you for watching today's video. See you next time. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Bye.